Good evening, 49er faithful. Welcome to another episode of Between Two Beards. I'm your host, Rob Schuh, as always, joined by my co-host, Randon McMahon. Randon, beard's looking good. Beard game is strong. How you feeling?
It's a mixed bag, man. I mean, ice in Texas, right? And people don't know how to drive in ice.
For those that missed it, on Twitter, we were following. It was live action. Randon is on the icy roads, and we're tracking him. Please continue, Randon.
Hazardous. Yeah, somebody tried to go, probably too fast over a bridge. They spun out. Ooh. It was just one bridge and everything like that. And I had to back up, and it took me out of commission for a little bit. So that's why we're a little bit late. But I'm happy because all you people in Northern California, this lineup for Aftershock, Rock and Roll Festival, you're talking about Slipknot, Rob Zombie, Kiss, Judas Priest, My Chemical Papa Roach, Foo Fighters. 4-day festival, man. This lineup is stacked. So you people in Northern California, get on that.
Is that what you were listening to on the drive? Is that the music that you were tuning into?
Well, I was playing some Foo Fighters, and then my brother texted me because that's his favorite band. Yeah. He's like, man, like they're playing in Northern California, that's where I'm from. It's a 4-day festival. You want to go? And I was like, well, based on how much prices all these festivals are now, maybe not, but I do want to go. But yeah, all you people in Northern California, I mean, Aftershock Festival's got a lineup that just got released, man. It looks good.
Nice. Well, I mean, I may have to make a journey down there. I want to take a moment out to give a shout out to somebody that I just met this afternoon. Harold, if you are watching, and maybe he's here in the comments, I'll keep my eye out. But I met Harold. So truth be told, I found out today I'm going to the NFL Combine. I got my freaking press credentials.
Give it up.
I have gotten the hotel room. I am looking to book the flight tonight and make sure that all of that happens. So I think to myself, Randon, I got
oil,
Yes. I got to look good, right? I got to be dapper. I got to make sure that I'm representing Rob Schuh and the brand that is Rob Schuh when I get to the Combine. So I go to Nordstrom to pick up some new gear, right? To grab some fresh threads. I walk in, and as I'm passing the security guard, he stops me. He's like, hey, man, do you have a podcast? And I'm like taken aback. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm in Portland, Oregon. I'm walking into a clothes store and somebody just stopped me to ask me if I have a podcast. I was like, hell yes, I have a podcast. We proceeded to introduce ourselves to one another. Harold turns out is a subscriber to the channel, a big fan. It was just a cool experience to run into somebody outside of the stadium, right? It was one thing to be at the NFC Championship game, have a couple of folks come up and say hello to me, but to have a complete stranger in the middle of Portland, Oregon flag me down, that was a cool experience, dude.
I mean, when you're at a game, Niners fans, they watch and all that kind of stuff, but when you're in the middle of Portland, you're closer to Seahawk country and all that kind of stuff. And then I'm sure, no offense to Portland, I've only been there one time, but you're kind of hipsterish with the beer and the bald head. I'm sure you could have been like, hey, this guy's like pertains to a lot of breweries, but he noticed unless you were wearing your Niners shirt. Were you wearing your Niners sweater, or were you in normal gear?
Truthfully, I mean, pretty much everywhere I go, Randon, I got some piece of Niner gear on. So I had both a Niner t-shirt that's like the old school emblem, that's that like 1946 emblem. Yeah. And then I also had on my mask was a Niners mask. And so, I mean, I'm pretty recognizable. But the mask is covering up the beard, right? The best aspect.
So positive, negative, positive, all that kind of stuff. But hey, it's a shout out. He noticed you through the beard, that you're on between two beards.
Yes.
So, hey, one, you're blowing up, and two, man, his recognition's on point.
On point. I would have never, from just the eyes and admittedly, this forehead is quite the forehead. So it's pretty easy to spot that from a distance. But I'm impressed, and shout out to Harold, who may be the first intern of the Schuh Show. I mean, it is very fortuitous that we met one another. Turns out he's in the industry. Harold, we are going to connect. No question about it. People in the chat are excited about the Combine news. Troy, sneakerhead on the channel. That's great news, Rob. Troy, I agree wholeheartedly. William Bennett coming in. I'm a big Rob Schuh fan. Like, subscribe, donate. Appreciate that, William, coming in as a sneakerhead on the channel.
He's got the mug in his photo. the mug that you have.
He comes on to the call-in show, the Sneakerhead call-in show, and he and I do the cheers. It is epic because he has the mug. It's phenomenal. I absolutely love it. I'm a big William Bennett fan, and I appreciate him putting out there liking the video, because I say it a lot in the off season right now that those likes really do mean something for anybody that enjoys the content. Really do appreciate those likes. Andre,
it's literally a half second. Like
that's right.
Just
a little click.
Even if you don't like the video, it's just a thing.
I won't go that far. But I'm with you.
Come on,
I'm with you. It's
business
easy.
type thing.
It's easy.
Selfish.
Andre Moore coming in. Good day, Rob and Randon. Good day to you, Andre. And yes, Rob Smith coming in. Congrats on the Combine invitation. You are big time now. I mean, I am. I'm kind of a big deal at this point. I have many leather-bound books. My house smells of rich mahogany. I am a big deal. That's a fair statement.
So before we get going on this, I think, Rob and I haven't really even talked about this, but the first thing that comes to mind, all you sneakerheads, all you Rob Schuh fans, Between the Beard fans, get him the prospects and the Combine Invitational guys that you want the most news on, so that way he can dictate which interviews he tries to chase, because you can't chase everybody. You can't get all the interviews, but what the most news that you guys want, the prospects that you guys want the most information on, send that to his email. Rob, what's the email?
Yeah, 49ersmailbag@gmail.com. 100%. Anybody that you're interested in, anyone you have insight on, anyone you have inside contacts on, hit me up. I need the Combine information. I'm certainly going to be learning from guys that have been to these types of events before. Jason Aponte is going to be there. I'm very excited for him. He got his press pass there as well. So I'm going to be tagging along and learning as I go. I'm sure it's going to be bigger than life in some regards, but I'm just going to be grinding. I'm going to be there doing the good work for the channel. All right, I got to answer this one because this is important. How do you become a sneakerhead? The greatest 49 coming in at Rob. How do I become part of the sneaker gang? You become a sneakerhead once you've hit subscribe on the channel, as long as you're not on an iPhone, because for some reason on an iPhone, it's almost impossible. You would have to go to the desktop browser version. But if you're on your computer or an Android, there's a little join button that you hit. And once you hit that join button, there are options to become a part of the sneakerhead community. I believe it is pretty easy. All right, now we got a question for you and I. Let's get you involved in this, Randon. Yeah. Rob Smith. Great name, Rob. Great name. At Rob Schuh and Randon McMahon, do either of you foresee a situation in which the team loses too many free agents and thus is not able to compete at a high level in 2022? Let me preface this, Randon, before I get your take on this, because I want yours first. Let me just read off the freaking list of free agents. These are not the exclusive right free agents or the restricted free agents. One or two names on here may be off, but here it goes. Laken Tomlinson, Jason Verrett, Raheem Mostert, DJ Jones, Arden Key, Jaquaski Tart, K'Wan Williams, Marcel Harris, Jordan Willis, Jeff Wilson Jr., Ross Dwelly, Trent Sherfield, Trenton Cannon, Josh Norman, Mohamed Sanu, Tavon Wilson, Travis Benjamin, Tom Compton, Dante Johnson, Maurice Hurst, Jake Brendel, Tyrell Adams, Tavarius Moore, but he's back on the end of his 4-year deal, and Richie James Jr. So it's a freaking mouthful is what it is. But if the Niners are unable to bring back a bunch of those free agents, do you see this team potentially not being a playoff contender?
So in the short answer, no. And the reason being, I think we're so deep. And fans fall in love with players, whether it be the Deebo Samuels, whether it be the Kittles. Oh, look, and then they fall in love with small guys that have blossomed, like Azeez Al-Shaair, right? And so you have those types of guys that you need to sign. Azeez is a guy that you need to sign away. But then people are like, oh, well, Greenlaw. What about Greenlaw? He made that historic stop on the goal line. We should re-sign him too. Eventually, you can't sign everybody, right? And people have to realize that the only way a team stays relevant is by having rookies produce under rookie contracts and having these guys produce. So you can't really sign everybody. I think that we're going to lose quite a bit of free agents, right?
I would think so.
Jaquaski Tart, right? You have Robert Saleh over there. They need safety help. They could probably pay him more than they pay us. You have Laken Tomlinson and Mostert that are probably going to go to Miami unless Mostert wants to stay in California because he's a big family man. Maybe that stays here. We talked about that on one of the last episode from the past and future segment for our running backs. But it's really tough. Like, you can't keep everybody. Most of Super Bowl attending teams or in that realm get snipered because, one, their team gets highlighted a lot.
Right.
All through the playoffs.
It draws the focus. Everyone's attention is on the 49ers.
Yeah, and if you're that far in the playoffs, your team's good. That means most of your roster is good, and so you're going to have that kind of stuff. And so it's really tough to keep everybody. And so you have to trust in your draft. We have a lot of draft picks, not a first round, but we have a lot of draft picks, and to be able to supplement that. And I think where maybe fans are really worried is that Trey Lance didn't play, Aaron Banks didn't play, Trey Sermon didn't play. The cornerback,
Yamador Lenore.
No, the third round pick,
Ambry Thomas.
Ambry Thomas, yes, he didn't play till the second half of the season. So you're looking at all those guys, and you're only getting one contributor at the second half of the season. It's concerning for most fans. The fact that hey, we don't have. Where's this next flow of talent coming from? And I would just say be patient. Right, we have a lot of picks this draft. We're gonna do some work, and then there's a lot of free agents. Like, the safety market is saturated, and we're not going to do the past, future, present for the safety market, the DBs, for a couple weeks. We're still on the offense, but we'll get deep into that. But just stay fresh in that kind of area. You might lose some guys that you have the heartstrings for, but most of the time, that's part of football.
Yeah, I got to agree that we probably will lose a fair number of those free agents that we just listed there, right? Most of them will be lesser role players within the organization. They'll be replaced by cheaper bodies, whether it is one of those 9 or 10 draft picks, depending on whether we get a pick in return in this draft for Jimmy Garoppolo or not. And so you would anticipate that they would attempt to fill those bodies with cheaper rookie deals as the Niners are tight up against the cap. But I agree with Randon in that the depth of this team is very impressive, and I would expect them to compete regardless of who they're able to bring back, because I'm confident that if they lose out on some of these more important free agents, that they will find replacements for them, that they will find a suitable fill-in at that position, even if it's not the person that you want. Wanted to bring in William Bennett here. Love it. Congratulations, Randon, on the start of your channel. I watched you with Jesse. Great contact. That was phenomenal. I saw that you had Jesse on the program as well. Saw that the initial launch happened last week. We put the description down, the video link down in the description. Everyone should go give that a watch. The official launch happened last week, had Jesse Naylor on this week. I'm sure it's going to be continuing phenomenal guests going forward. Randon, how excited have you been in launching that channel and creating your own content there?
It's good. I think the fact that it's something that I can kind of control, and I'm just about sports stories. It's not necessarily all about Niners. I'm actually weirdly enough, my mother's coworker is the mom for the Rams long snapper. I know that's a lot of connections.
That is.
But we're talking about having the Rams long snapper on my podcast to just talk about life in general, about being a long snapper and all that kind of stuff. Really just want to, have sports be the forefront. Good stories, good people, great vibes, great content. And so, we're talking football, baseball, hockey. We're talking a little bit of basketball. Actually, tomorrow night, I have 2 guys that played pro in Europe coming on talking about the NBA. So everything under the sun, all the videos will have the description of what we're talking about. Just come poke your head in, subscribe. If it's for you, watch. If it's not for you, wait till the next episode, because the next episode could be for you.
There you go.
We're rotating that kind of stuff. It's good stuff.
It is new content coming out. Give it a look. All right, let's get into some of our topics here. We got to get through this.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about some impact positions in the NFL draft, specifically targeting rounds 2 and 3, because why? The 49ers do not have a first-round draft pick. As of right now, they're just looking at their 61st overall pick as the first of those picks to be made. Randon, how do you see the value in the draft? How do you see the Niners attacking this? What's your take on those first couple of rounds where the Niners will be involved for sure?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of positions they could go, right? And mainly that stuff is dictated by free agency. So we'll see where that goes. And I think Tart is probably gone. I think the Jets will offer him a little bit of money. You don't know how the offensive line is going to look, right? If Lakin goes, then Banks is probably going to move to the left side, and then the right side of the offensive line is suspect. Maybe it's more, maybe it's run skill.
Yeah.
So maybe they go interior offensive line there, and maybe they go edge, right? They want the defensive line after week 7 was one of the best defensive lines. I think I said offensive. Now defensive line was one of the best after week 7, and so maybe you draft an edge guy to compete on that side with Amana Mayhew and Ebucom that can be there for a while and get younger in a prime position, right? So edge is Bosa's probably going to make over 30 million. So you need cheaper options on the other side if you're going to pay Bosa that much. So in a long story, I think you're looking at those types of situations, and we're going to get to the past and future segment of the wide receiver, if a little foreshadowing there,
right,
in the segment. But wide receiver is a need, right? We only have 2 under contract. Jennings is probably going to be back, but we lacked a certain skill set in the wide receiver group, and we'll get to that. And so that could be a position there. And ultimately for me, I'm a big fan of BPA and not drafting for need. So maybe if you have 4 or 5 position groups and you draft the best player available, or if some player falls, and a good example of this is Micah Parsons for the Cowboys, right? Pre-draft last year, he was 1 or 2. A lot of quarterbacks moved their way up into the top 5, and he was drafted outside the top 10. And Cowboys got a steal.
Yes, they did.
Because
hell of a rookie season for Micah Parsons.
Yeah, it's not a position of need because the fact that he's a linebacker, right? Most people want tackles or quarterbacks or this and that, and he fell, and he was a wrecker all year long.
No doubt,
playing linebacker, defensive end. So you can't not look at best player available. And I think there's a lot of positions that you could draft, and I think that Banks was a need pick, and they reached for that pick for a need.
That's a fair statement.
And so now I think this draft, you just need to take BPA because like I said last segment, we're deep enough to where it doesn't really matter who they choose. We just need an impact player at that point.
Yeah, I tend to agree on best player available, but I do think the Niners have to have their eye on some specific position groups, to your point as well.
Fair.
To me, the offseason priorities are clear, right? And draft needs are going to be greatly impacted by free agency, and it's my stance that the top priority for the San Francisco 49ers is primarily to re-sign their own players. We just went through that long laundry list of freaking names. To me, the current needs, the top free agents I want to re-sign, I've said this on the program before, so this isn't breaking news, but just to reiterate, DJ Jones, Laken Tomlinson, Raheem Mostert, Arden Key, Jaquaski Tart. So any of those players that don't get re-signed, to me, become a priority as far as position groups. Edge, interior run stuffing, D-line, interior O-line, running back, and safety. Some additional positions in need that I have in there are nickel corner and a speed wide receiver / return man. But to me, it's about getting value later in the draft, 5th round or later. And some of those positions are ones that you can tackle later in the draft. And the 49ers have shown some ability to do that. So running back, run stuffer, speed wide receiver, return man, those all feel like ones where you can get some value. So for me, value later in the draft. For me, the top positions for value early on, so long as there aren't runs on these players, would be edge. It's listed to be a very deep class. A lot of projects, which is good for the 49ers being in that second round.
Deep in the second and third round. So there's not a lot of high. There's some high-end edge, and then there's quite a few in the second and third round. Keep going, Rob.
Yeah, a couple of those guys right at the top of the draft, but then most of them deserve to be drafted in the second and the third. Interior O-line, second round is early to be addressing that, but when you're trying to fill in for Alex Mack's eventual retirement, you have to prioritize it. So that for me is up there. Playmaking safety is not one I had initially thrown out there, but someone presented that to me, and I find it to be pretty compelling that they could actually bring in someone, if they lose Jaquaski Tart, to bring in somebody that can produce some splashier plays at safety.
What was the compelling argument for you? What was the compelling argument that why did it change your mind?
It's the idea of having a of drafting specifically for playmakers, game changers. You can certainly draft someone that adds to the stout nature of the team, right? A run stuffing defensive lineman, an interior O lineman. That's going to shore up the trenches. but it's not necessarily going to create significant plays in a game. If you bring in somebody like a rangy safety that can potentially add a few additional interceptions to the defense, that can be a game changer.
Yeah, I really like Petrie for Baylor.
Yes.
He's played multiple positions, and the fact that Tart and Ward were kind of interchangeable because Petrie played multiple positions in college, I think he could be that kind of player. There's in free agency, I don't know how much what he's going to cost because the safety market is deep in free agency, but a lot of people have been throwing around Tyrann Mathieu and the fact that he's a ball hawk type safety.
Yeah, there's a solid 7 starting safeties out there that are quality. I think it's going to be a soft market. I think there's a chance Tart returns, and then this all becomes a moot point.
Yeah.
But I agree. Petrie was actually the example that individual listed when making that case. And so that's the one I'm on board with as far as a playmaker in the second round at safety. And then I think a flexible corner could be a good position as well. A DJ Reed type, if the Niners don't actually try to negotiate with DJ Reed. Someone who gives you flexibility to play the slot and outside, right? Because obviously the Niners have issues at both, losing, Jason Verrett, losing Josh Norman, losing Dante Johnson, potentially, right? They may choose not to bring those guys back in free agency. So that would be my focus on it. But, we may have multiple second round picks after we trade Jimmy Garoppolo, and that may give us greater flexibility.
Yeah, I think you could put both those second round picks or second and third and move up. You could just hold tight because there's a lot of similar players in that realm, and you're looking at guys that have, I'm going to mention in the wide receiver segment a player who is rated as the 7th best wide receiver, but he's suspected to go in the 100 round realm of picks, and so there's lots of value there. And if you can fit it into the draft group, you can have several impact players there in that realm. I know Thomas Tui is talking about Hufanga. For me, in the safety realm, I don't think Hufanga is a starter. I think he, at this point, he hasn't proven enough. But he's a dynamite special teams player. When we do 3 safety packages, he's good at being in the box. And so he could be that hybrid guy. You don't always need impact players, and sometimes you need to have to draft that. By the way, most people don't know that the last first or second round pick for secondary has been Jimmy Ward. So it's been a while since we've put a high pick on secondary to have that generation type player that's been around for us for a long time.
Wasn't Jaquiski Tartt a second round pick himself?
No, I don't think so.
I thought he was. I'll
look it up, but I don't think so.
Okay, you look it up. I'm going to this comment because Thomas Luttrell put this comment on my page, and it leads into our next topic. So it's perfect. But I want to address this because I think many people feel this way. Thomas comes in and says, at Rob and Randon, what do you think of nasally voiced nerds who've done an about face and now say it's okay if Trey Lance sits behind Brady? So, Thomas Luttrell, first I have to ask, is this a shot at Randon and myself? It's clearly in the comment he left on the page. It was clearly meant at podcasters in general. I don't think I have a nasally voice. I think it's pretty rich and deep. So my guess is Thomas isn't directly referring to me. And the same is true for Randon. You have a nice deep voice, bellowy, right? So I don't think either one of us are these nasally individuals that he may be referring to. But I do lovingly think of myself as a nerd. And therefore I may fit a bit of his description here. So let me say this about the Brady conversation. I understand that many people get exhausted by the topic. For me, in speaking about it, you have to bring it to the table because it's a relevant conversation. It's a relevant conversation, but this is not a reflection on Trey Lance or his ability to start next season. To me, I would be very excited to go with Trey Lance. I would be thrilled to move into the Trey Lance era. But this is the greatest of all time that we're talking about. And so it warrants the dialogue. That's what I have to say around the idea of bringing the Brady topic back to the table.
Yeah,
Let's do that, though.
No, he's the greatest of all time. And I think, one, nasally voice, that might just be you being very expressive with your verbiage. But the time and frame where you have to play the sport to comment on is no longer, right? I mean, people like Vish or other players or other people have spent their whole life dissecting this kind of thing. And now there's colleges like Full Sail that you get a degree in sports broadcasting or sports production or multimedia or whatever, like you can pinpoint your level of knowledge into a certain area without ever touching the football on the field. And I know that playing the game gives you a certain level of expertise, but doesn't mean that you can't be an expert in the field of play by not playing the game.
Yeah, and I don't know that Thomas was taking that deep of a shot at podcasting in general, but I agree with that sentiment that you just shared there, Randon.
I don't think so either. I just want to throw it out there.
No, that makes sense. All right, so the Brady rumors do persist, though, and therefore, if it's constantly in the national media, it means that we do have to speak to it because people are curious. Brady still hasn't filed paperwork. You know, the odds of him potentially asking out of Tampa Bay, freeing himself from their retired list could be changing. You know, when you think about this, Randon, when you envision what hasn't been said yet, what's your impression of this conversation right now? What's your impression of Tom Brady and what his next move might be and what it might cost if the Niners did explore attempting to bring him in?
Yeah, so to go back to what Tart was the last one. He was a second-round pick. Ward was a first-round pick the year before. So you were right.
Got it.
But still, 2015 is a long time to draft a secondary. Yeah.
Long time.
So for Brady, for me, it was nothing but jibber jabber for a long time.
Yeah.
But now that he hasn't filed and all this kind of stuff and you know, I think it's probably about a 35% chance that it gets done. I think it's 100% on Brady that he wants to come here. If he was going to come back out of retirement, it's all up to the Niners whether they want to bring him in. And there's positive negatives. I mean, like you're bringing in the GOAT, right? I mean, he threw for over 5,000 yards this last season with not a noodle arm, but the 45-year-old arm. I just think that you have that kind of playmaking ability. You have Evans, Godwin. I mean, Antonio Brown wasn't there for half the season. You have a better running back core than you do with Leonard Fournette. You have a great defense and running game. And so for me, it's like, okay, yeah, he could come in and win a championship, but there's positive and negatives to that, right? Like the higher chance of us winning a championship this year is probably with Tom Brady over Trey Lance. But does the deficit of him sitting, meaning Trey Lance sitting another year behind Tom Brady, like throw this franchise out of whack, right? That's 3 straight seasons he would be sitting at this point.
Right.
No progression. I mean, there's only so much you can learn by sitting behind somebody. I think, you know, it's hard to say no to the GOAT, but I think it would throw the franchise look of the Niners out of whack.
I tend to agree that it would be awkward in that respect. With regard to Brady even getting out of Tampa Bay, I know fans are like, well, you know, they own the rights. The Bucs own the rights. To me, my belief on this hasn't changed. My belief is that the Bucs will not play hardball with Tom Brady. Agreed. They may have already struck a gentleman's agreement with him. My thought is they probably spoke to him before he signed with them in the first place because Brady is conscious of his legacy. The Bucs are conscious of his everyone is conscious of his legacy. It is of critical importance to him, to the NFL. I mean, it's something that shouldn't be trifled with. So my guess is that the Bucs would either release him out of respect for the legend, or it's something trivial in relation to his actual value, something like a second round pick to get him out of there, because Brady isn't going to want a team to give up too much in order to get him, right? He wants to have that ammo. So I still actually put this as a really one-off chance that it happens. To me, I know you were saying that you have it somewhere closer to 35%. For me, it's a 5% chance. To me, it's like a maybe even less. It's a 1 in 20, 1 in 100 type of a scenario, but it still warrants the conversation in my book because you're talking about the greatest of all time. And the reason I'm more okay with it from the franchise's standpoint than I would be Aaron Rodgers is, to your point, is that any one of these guys coming in disrupts the plan for Lance. But with Brady, at least you could try for just a 1-year disruption. You'd still have Lance 2 more years on the original rookie deal with the 5th-year option after that to make it 3 years. I agree that it's not great for his development, but he did get 1 game in 2020 for North Dakota State. He got 2.5 games for the Niners. So he's had some playing, and you would think that would continue next season as well. Even if Brady was starting, you would think Lance would get some snaps at some point to help his progression.
I don't think he would. If Brady's there, he's sitting all year. And I think, let's just go down this scenario. Let's say this trade happens. And I think you could get this trade easily as a 1-for-1 deal, Brady for Garoppolo.
Mm-hmm.
Because if Brady wants out, like I truly believe what you said is true. Hey, Brady saying, hey, Bucks, I won you a Super Bowl. I'm going to be retiring. So you can trade me to whoever you want to for picks.
Yeah.
Like, don't try to get the best deal. Kyle Trask isn't the answer. So at least you have Jimmy Garoppolo as a serviceable guy. Yeah, he can't throw the ball downfield like in Bruce Arians' offense. Like, he's not the ideal quarterback, but he's serviceable until you move forward. And then you go for the Niners. Let's play. What if Brady wins the championship this year? So we win a Super Bowl, and Brady's like, you know what? Let's run it back. It might not be a one-year deal. Then you're talking about
at that point, though, Randon. I'm willing to sell my soul for a Super Bowl win at this point. So if you win the Super Bowl,
some fans aren't.
It's off. Like, at that point, do whatever the hell you want, John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan, Jed York. If you bring me that 6th Lombardi trophy, the stage is yours. Do with it as you like. That would be my stance on it.
So, I mean, and then I saw a comment, I don't remember what it was, but Tom Brady's always taking discounted contracts to play everywhere.
Yeah.
His wife is a Victoria's Secret model, if you didn't know, and she's worth about $400 million. So they don't really care, about money. He just wants to win. I mean, that's why he's restructured his deal over and over and over again. I mean, in fact, he might play for $5 million if he wants to play for the Niners. If that's his hometown team and he wants that nostalgia, he might play for cheaper than Trey Lance's contract just to win a Super Bowl again.
That would be nuts.
Everybody wrong. So, it's kind of crazy. I think the biggest disruption is 2 things. One, you have the Trey Lance is getting pushed back another year, maybe 2 years, depending on how that works.
Yeah. 2,
the type of free agents and the draft is going to be completely different depending on which quarterback we have.
True.
So you might have a lot of 1-year deals with veterans that are win now mode. The Niners are trying to go for the one and done type deal. They sacrifice the future just to win this year. With Trey Lance, you're trying to build not only for this year, but in the future. So it's going to be completely different.
I do agree that it could be completely different. And Thomas, just to finish his thought, comes in, says, at Rob and Randon, Trey would ask for a trade if that happened, if they brought in Tom Brady. Sitting 1 year is one thing. Sitting 2 is another. Thomas, to that, I would just say that I think sitting behind the GOAT is what's different from other scenarios. I agree that if Aaron Rodgers came in and you're looking at a multiple year scenario, then Lance's camp would probably push for that trade. And you would probably want to trade him as the 49ers organization anyway. I don't know that Trey would have that sort of a violent reaction to a 1-year delay in his ability to start. The 49ers could still be very much committed to him in that process, but I certainly understand where you're going with that line of thinking.
Yeah, it's purely hypothetical for me and for Thomas. If you go and play somewhere else, like if it's a 1-year thing and you think it's a 1-year thing, say you get traded to, I don't know, a team that needs a quarterback, the Saints, that could work out, or those types of things. If those types of teams are willing to give up a high round pick for him, but no team is giving up 3 first-rounders for Trey. So the Niners are going to be losing the balance of scales as far as draft picks, regardless of who they trade to. So if they know Brady's one and done, if they come in, then it'll be one thing. But I don't think if he wins the Super Bowl, I don't think it's one and done. I think it may be 2 and done. And that's just a hypothetical.
I just disagree in that I think Brady probably learned his lesson because he went for 2 in Tampa and that didn't end well, right? If he wants a storybook ending, the next Super Bowl he wins, the dude needs to ride off into the sunset. He can't push his luck again. He can't roll the dice. Yeah. He needs to pull the John Elway and go out on the high note.
Going on top with his childhood team, yeah, you could be right.
You got to Costanza that move, right? Yeah. You gotta leave on a high note. That's got to be it's got to be the picture perfect storybook ending. All right, let's continue.
All right, between 2 beers, see you later.
You got to make a good point before you do. You gotta hit that, get some laughs, and then walk off. So let's continue with the Brady take before we do have a super chat that I'm going to get to. I promise. I just want to finish the Brady take before we sidetrack ourselves with that super chat. So this one is around Mike Florio's take on it. And he explained it very succinctly. So I'm going to read off a few quotes from this article to get us kicking here, Randon, and then ask for your response on it. So Mike writes, so let me say it here. I think Tom Brady will play for the 49ers in 2022. I don't know that he will. I'm not predicting that he will, but I have a feeling that he will. If he doesn't, he doesn't. If he does, many will be surprised. I won't be. It shouldn't really surprise anyone. What have we heard over and over regarding Brady's football career? What more does he have to prove? Nothing. But he has never played for the team he grew up rooting for, and that team, the 49ers, has a Super Bowl ready roster. Just add quarterback. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, as much as our last segment, I pleaded the case for the positive of him coming here. I think I'm going to go with the negative on this side, or not the negative, but the him not coming here.
Yeah, right. Play devil's advocate.
Yeah, and so one, he already stated in multiple interviews, which he didn't name the quarterback, but he said, "You're going to go with this guy over me."
Yeah, that
like
MFer.
Yeah, and you're going to choose him over me. Like, is that really your take? Like. And, he grew up there. Giselle has been not outspoken, but rumors have said that they're, butthurt about that not coming to fruition. His family has done the same thing in hushed tones, not in like open interviews or anything like that. So, it just sounds like, hey, Brady's a proud person and he wants to win. I understand that, but he was outspoken about being besmirched with the Niners before, and he might not like to come back, with for this team just because. I was trying to come up with a nice phrase, but I couldn't come up with it off the top of my head. I don't think he wants to come back just because it's the Niners. I think he's maybe a little bit too proud.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, they did rebuff him the one time, and so certainly he could take offense there. I like the idea that there's a chance Brady is simply gaslighting the 49ers and their fan base right now because he got rebuffed, that he took offense to the idea that we didn't sign him when we had the chance, and now he's floating all these rumors and making his retirement seem unsure because he's like, well, here's a little bit of payback. You can get your hopes up and then not actually get to land the greatest of all time. So let me talk a little bit about Mike Florio's take on whether the Bucs would let him out. And he does side a bit with me on this one. He says it won't be easy. The Buccaneers hold Brady's rights. But if Brady wants out, would they deny him that opportunity? He delivered a Super Bowl win. He filled the stadium in 2021. He signed an extension last year for cap reasons. Would they tell him tough crap if he asked to be traded or released? This is where I agree with Florio, that I think the Bucs would concede to Brady in that regard. I think if it came down to it, I think the question to me, I guess this is what I'm boiling it down to, Randon. I want to know if you agree. The question for me is just, does Brady want to play anymore again? That's the only question I have. Once he decides that, to me, all the other dominoes fall into place. The Bucs will come into line, even if they request a little bit of something, but they're not going to play hardball. To me, this all hinges on Tom.
It does. I think Tom really wants to play. I actually think the Niners. It's up to the Niners.
Interesting.
If the Niners really want to move forward with Tom, they can. But I think they spent so much money in Trey. It's really that kind of thing.
Considerable assets.
Do you want to jeopardize? Let's bring out the crystal ball. Some people say, like you said, hey, if we win one Super Bowl, I really don't give an F what happens.
Done.
Right? There's other people that say, hey, I believe, which on my show last night, Jesse Naylor said, I believe that Trey Lance is a 10 to 15 year all-pro style play quarterback.
I believe that as well.
And so for me, I think I would take the gamble on him winning multiple Super Bowls for the Niners, and that I would not delay his track anymore. And so it comes down to that atmosphere. I think the Niners have to decide more than anything. If the Niners make the opportunity juicy enough, Brady will play, in my opinion. Because if he really wanted to retire, his papers would have been filed already.
That's a fair statement. And Mike Florio points that out. Never has he said the words. For now, he's retired, he says, even though he never used the word, even though he said never say never. So Brady, again, he's trolling people or he's intending not to retire. One or the other is freaking true in this
Regardless,
instance.
I think this all goes down within 2 weeks.
I agree.
Because the Niners need to know what they're doing in free agency and the draft.
Yes.
And you have to know who your starting quarterback is.
100%. Because part of the appeal of bringing Brady in is the freaking bandwagon of fools that would come with him, right? All the people
Gronk to back up Kittle for $1 million or $2 million.
The people who would be chasing a ring, because of course they would. Of course they should. This is where I disagree. So this is Florio as well. Here's the reality. If Brady doesn't join the Niners now, he never will. So yes, I've got a feeling he wants to do it and that by week 1, he will. I disagree with the whole by week 1 thing. If he's going to come in, he needs to do it now because he's got to learn a complicated offense. He's going to be here a short time. So to me, these rumors, I agree with you, Randon. These rumors are going to be put to bed fairly soon because at some point, it just doesn't make sense to bring him in. You've already locked down what your roster looks like. You've already committed to players. You've probably brought in a backup quarterback to be behind Trey, and you've probably traded Jimmy Garoppolo, and you may not have the assets needed to bring Brady aboard. So to me, it's got to happen soon.
Yeah, Tyrod Taylor is going to cost $5 million or so, or
10
backup quarterback. Yeah, whatever. And the assets are going to be spent. Tom Brady ain't coming to the Niners August 1st, like, hey, I want to play. That ain't going to happen. Like the Niners in win now mode. We talked about it in multiple podcasts in a row. The NFC is weak. So the Rams are going to contend. If Aaron Rodgers leaves Green Bay, they're out of it.
The NFC is winnable. It may not be weak, but it's winnable.
Compared to the AFC. To the AFC, it's weak. And so the Niners with Trey could be a top 2 team in this division next year, even with all the rookie lumps that you're going to have from a quarterback, because the rest of the roster is so deep. If you have to delay all that because you're playing the wishy-washy stuff with Brady, this team ain't going to win any games because of the fact that you haven't decided a track. And so the biggest disappointment with the Niners roster last year is that they played the fence with Trey Lance. They made such an aggressive move to get Trey Lance, and then they played the fence game with both quarterbacks. This year, they need to decide something early and build the whole team around that philosophy. And let's dominate this next season.
Yeah. In fairness, they were pretty clear on going with Jimmy the whole time. It was mainly pundits who thought they were on the fence. I think they laid out the plan and then stuck to it. I like what Philip says here. 49ers can end the Brady speculation as soon as they bring in a quarterback too. Like that's real. That is real. Bring in Tyrod Taylor. I'm telling you, that will end it.
Baby.
All right. William Bonnet. Billy the Kid coming in here. Is it crazy to trade a 3rd or a 4th round pick for a high quality offensive lineman like we did with Trent Williams? Offensive line is a top priority, not wide receiver, defensive end, or defensive back. For sustained success, we need offensive line. First and foremost, I agree on the priority of offensive line. I do think for a young quarterback, assuming in my book, it's 95 to 99% that it's a Trey Lance era that we're beginning this next year. So assuming it's Trey Lance, you've got a young quarterback, a mobile quarterback, a healthy, specifically blind side of that line, the left side is so paramount to his success. I would gladly trade a mid-round draft pick to bring in a veteran offensive lineman because not only have the Niners shown that they're inconsistent at drafting O-linemen, I'm not convinced that they're great at developing them either. So I would be totally on board with this. What about you, Randon?
Yeah, but this is an anomaly. You're not going to get an all-pro, the best tackle in the NFL, for
no
a
way.
3rd or 4th round pick. The only reason we got him for that round is that Trent Williams wasn't going to play for the Redskins. He wanted out. He was going to hold out another year if he didn't get traded, and we threw out a pick mid-draft.
So just to change it then, though, just to make it a more relevant question so we get a better answer out of it, let's say it's not Trent Williams, because I don't think that's what he was getting at, that you get an all-star level. But let's say it's like a Laken Tomlinson deal where it's an underperforming high draft pick that didn't work out with the team. Are you on board with that?
Yeah, I mean, if we can get a guy for that kind of money, for me, it looks like this. I think Lincoln's done with this team. I think Miami
Mm,
will offer more money than what we can pay. Mac will probably play one more year. So I think even though you're fully against this, I think the draft is where it's at. You need to draft a center that can play, that can learn under Mac for one more year. I think Bank gets moved to left guard. I think Moore and Brunskill shoot it out for right guard. And then maybe you bring in a guy, with a mid round pick that is willing to go there. But Lincoln is the second or third best guard in this free agent class.
yes.
So you're looking at 10 mil for him, possibly 8 to 10 mil, which means you'd have to go to the sixth or seventh best to fit in our salary cap, depending on what they're trying to do. So I would like it. I would do that to get a veteran if we can't get Tomlinson back. But ultimately, I think the guard spots are going to be young, and we're going to have McGlinchey, who's off an injury, Williams, and Mack, and we're probably going to have to draft a backup center, if not another guard this year, to battle it out within the interior.
I think that's prudent. And I would say I'm actually not against going interior offensive line. I actually have that as a priority. I want to attack in the draft. I'm against going interior offensive line and having two younger guys starting. I think you've got to do what you can to lock down Laken Tomlinson. If it's 8 to 10, I hope the Niners pay that much. If it's 11 to 12, that's where I think the Niners may bow out of the bidding war. And it could very well get there. I would say if they miss out on Laken Tomlinson, I would rather them go after a next tier free agent to fill that slot and only have one young gentleman stepping in along the offensive line. But I'm
Fair
open
enough.
to having a competition. That is for sure. Let's get back into our topics and transition a little bit to our crystal ball.
Yeah.
Some potential breakout players for the 49ers. So clearly, Debo took the top off the season with what he did. On the other side of the ball, Aziz was running around like a man with his hair on fire. Both had breakout seasons. If you had to pick a breakout candidate, two breakout candidates, whatever floats your fancy, Randon, who are your choices for the Niners?
Yeah, it depends on where they go in the draft and everything. But based on what the roster is now and what I perceive the roster to be, I think Ambry Thomas is going to be that guy. And
I got him on my list.
I think he's probably going to get over 5 picks because he likes to play man. He likes to play aggressive.
Yes, he does.
And you look at not to bring up the Cowgirls or anything like that. No offense to any Cowboys fans in here, but Diggs made a living this year off of being aggressive. He allowed a lot of yards, but he went for the picks. And I think Ambry Thomas is good at the catch point. He likes to play man. He likes to play physical. And this next year, he's not going to be dealing with having a year off because of COVID. He ain't going to be dealing with being underweight because of sickness. He's going to be ready to go. A lot of people say that he could have been a fringe first, second round pick, depending on his year if he played. So I think Ambry Thomas might be that guy who is the lockdown type man-to-man corner, who's physical, who has that swag in this game, and the defense definitely does need it.
I love it. I went, thankfully, I have 2 selections because you just stole my first one. So I have to agree with Ambry Thomas. I think he's just scratched the surface. His confidence was surging, and that's so important for the cornerback position. So I'm going to give you that one because I agree wholeheartedly. But the other one that I have on there, and this was inspired by not only his play at the end of the season, but his confidence on Twitter, most recently, Charles Omenihu. So he was really coming on at the end of the year. And David Lombardi tweets this out on Twitter just a couple of days ago. From week 14 onward, when the 49ers D-line had gelled, Charles Omenihu racked up 14 pressures in just 77 pass rushing attempts. What a shrewd find by San Francisco, considering that they traded a 6th-round pick for 2 seasons of team control. Omenihu remains under contract for 2022. And Charles retweets it, quote tweets it, and puts, "Just give me a full year in that system." man, it gave me chills. I was like, Charles, my man, you are going to have a hell of a season. It got me fired up, right? It is the type of mindset that I want for a player on a defensive line, to have that dog mentality, much like with Ambry Thomas, to have that confidence. And I do see the physical skill set of that individual being a great match for a player, a coach like Chris Kosarick, who has shown time and time again that he can drag something out of previously underperforming players. And I thought I saw that from Charles already last season. So I'm excited for him in 2022.
Yeah, we might get outbid for Key, and
yeah, I think there's a good chance of that.
But Naylor brought up a good point last night that Key might take the Jason Verrett route, where he bets on himself, right? He might make $5 or $6 million this year on a 1 or 2 year deal. But if he has back-to-back seasons with production, what if he has a full season under Chris and he gets 8, 9, 10 sacks, and he gets $8 to $10 million on a 3 year deal for betting on himself? So we might get Key back if he decides to go that route. But I'm going to agree with Thomas. And if you can throw that comment up there, Thomas, at 8:18 p.m., he stated that Ambry Thomas, but Bank needs a breakout. And I fully think that Laken Tomlinson is going to be the highest free agent to leave us, just because I think we're going to get bought out by Miami. And we have a lot of unknowns. Banks didn't really play. And so it might not be a breakout, but for us to be successful, Bank is going to have a good season if we don't have anybody there. And there's a lot of people saying, "Oh, well, he'll move to left guard where he played in college,"
right,
and all that kind of stuff. So it might not be a breakout type season, but he's going to have a revolutionary season for him, considering he didn't play much this season, for our run game to be effective. Like you have that lockdown left side of the offensive line. So good on you, Thomas. Throwing in Banks there. I don't think it's a breakout candidate, but he needs to have a successful season for our run game to be effective.
Yeah, he's got to show something, no doubt. GD5 coming in. I love the trade for Omenihu when it happened. A huge athlete at 24 years old on the edge is not someone you trade for. Just a 6th rounder. That was a steal. I totally agree. And it seems the early returns are good.
They're doing it a lot. Willis, and Omenihu, Key. So what they're doing is they're the spark scores of athleticism. They're getting all the athletic DNs, and they're relying on the best defensive line coach in the NFL. Like, hey, teach these guys skill, because these guys all got athleticism. Like, teach these guys skill. Yeah. And then what also helps? Bosa is one of the best skilled defensive linemen in the NFL. His hand game is ridiculous. And so, I think that they are repeatedly doing that. Hey, which guys have drowned out, have high athleticism, and can function? And AGB, he's on a treadmill, probably eating steak at the same time, right? Getting that protein, getting those carbs down.
I just thought that was clever. Yeah. I thought that was clever. All right, let's transition to our next topic here. I want to ask you about this, Randon. Does the 49ers secondary need an upgrade, or would running it back, so to speak, be enough? If they brought back K'Wan Williams and Jaquiski Tart, the two sort of marquee free agents at the position, and then refilled those positions left by Josh Norman and Jason Verrett being one of those that Josh Norman filled, but Josh Norman and Dante Johnson, you can get role players to fill in those spots. If they brought back the two keys in K'Wan Williams and Tart, would that be enough, or do they need an upgrade and new talent at the position, in your opinion?
Well, I think you can make the case for them being enough, but they're getting old, right? I mean, the only player under 25 is Ambry Thomas on the roster for the secondary. So, you've had Ward, who's over 30, Tart's over 30, K'Wan Williams got roasted the second half of the season. I think he's over 30. So a lot of these players, the Niners have neglected secondary. They've neglected addressing it. I mean, the biggest acquisition we had was Jason Verrett, who was an all-pro, but he's been injured so much. And when they signed him, for $1 million, that's a no-brainer. But they haven't really made a move at all. I mean, re-signing Mosley was the biggest amount of money, that and the extension for Ward, that they've spent on the secondary. So for me, they need something. They need to invest more. And they're the complete opposite. But we'll get into that debate on secondary versus edge. But they need to do that. I think that's why, regardless if they sign Tart or not, or K1 or not, they need to have a draft pick again in the secondary. Continue loading that up. I think Diamador Lenore is probably a good slot corner. Like, he makes that mold, but he got toasted a lot because he doesn't have that straight edge speed. And the slot fade, we got roasted on that multiple times in K1. And so I think K1's toasted in his career. I don't think he's not toasted. I think he's past his prime.
He's lost a step. Yeah.
Yeah, lost a step. And so, Petrie, which we already mentioned for safety, we have to get younger. And we have to not try to run it back. I think the thing from 2019, the revenge tour, where we re-sign everybody and try to do it again, is not the philosophy that we need to keep doing. We need to invest in certain positions and get younger and invest more into those types of groups, because it's a passing league nowadays.
Yeah. I like how you started out being like, well, yeah, they could run it back, but you eventually talked yourself into, no, they can't just run it back. They need to add some
for me,
to that.
For me, I'd get rid of Tart and K1 and draft Petrie or a safety and get a younger slot corner. DJ Reed can play outside and slot. I don't know if Seattle will let him go for that cheap, but
those would be. I would go that route. When I look at it, I'm taking the other side of should they run it back? No, that would not be sufficient in my book. There needs to be some investment in the secondary from the 49ers. Would a shutdown corner be nice? Yes, absolutely. Of course it would, but I don't think that's in the cards. The Niners just have not shown a willingness to expend those types of assets to bring in somebody. But greater depth and an upgrade at either safety or nickel, to me, would be the prudent move. I like the idea of bringing in Art the Collector here, talking about needing a young, speedy, playmaking safety. Petrie potentially being the pick, according to AJB. You mentioned Petrie as well. I do think that a player in that mold at safety would be beneficial for the Niners. And I think that they could fill in the rest of their secondary. I would love to bring in someone like DJ Reed, who gives you that flexibility inside and outside. If you did both of those moves, if you added Petrie in the draft and then DJ Reed to be your slot corner, to me, done and done.
Yeah.
Wipe your hands of it.
Because for me, it's this. We already know the Niners' philosophy. It's D-line.
Yes.
But you don't need lockdown corners if you have that high-level defensive line. You need competent, and you need depth.
Yep.
And the Niners didn't have a lot when they were playing Norman and Kirkpatrick and all these guys off the street, because they didn't have
was
depth.
Tested.
Right. And so now you have Ambry Thomas, you have Mosley, who are competent corners, and you just need guys. I think really, if they went playmaking in the secondary, right? Maybe not the best all around, but best playmaking at the position, and then had a solid D line. Right. I mean, again, I don't want to bring up the Cowboys, but Diggs, right? Like, if you have guys that can make plays, who are not necessarily the lockdown guys that don't give up any yards ever, but have a nose for the ball, and you allow our defensive line to eat, that might be the recipe for success.
Yeah, I found that comment to be just perfect for the transition into the next topic, because I think, the one bleeds into the other. But the question then becomes, which upgrades are more important? Because we went through the list of free agents, and there's a laundry list of names that fall both along the defensive line and in the secondary. And some of those are pretty key role players for the San Francisco 49ers. To me, when you ask the question, which one will the Niners invest more in this offseason, I think you have to define what you mean by an investment to some extent. I think there will be, I think there will be more cap dollars and higher draft picks used on pass rushers in this offseason. I think potentially the Niners explore Dante Fowler, who was dropped by the Falcons. To me, that's a marriage made in freaking heaven for the Niners and Dante Fowler. But you're potentially going to need a replacement or a re-signing for DJ Jones, Arden Key, Jordan Willis, Jason Verrett, Jaquiski Tart, K'Wan Williams, a bunch of replacement level bodies. Kevin Givens and Kentavious Street are most likely going to be back on those team-friendly contracts, but you still have Dante Johnson, Josh Norman, Maurice Hurst. So a lot of these bodies that you've got to fill out. And it is about balance. You mentioned that, Randon. It's about finding the right combination of a complementary relationship between pass rush and coverage. The more dominant one is, the less dominant the other needs to be. If your coverage unit is very dominant, then your pass rush has longer to get to the quarterback. If your pass rush is dominant, then your cover corners only need to cover for a limited amount of time. But what happens if you're phenomenal at one and horrible at the other? I feel like that's more of a recipe for disaster. And that was the Niners early in the season to me. So in my book, the Niners have to be smart about this, but they've got to make calculated re-signings and investments along both. I think they will skew towards the defensive line as they have for years now.
Yeah, I think they will too. That's just their MO. And you know, I think that the fact that, you know, it's just how they, you know, Lynch has said that, okay, that's how we won championships. But Lynch has said that, but he's also a Hall of Fame safety. So, you know, like you had to have both. You know, you're not, Warren Sapp doesn't do anything if you're not making those picks or vice versa. And so for me, I know a lot of people, you know, there was a comment in there saying Trayvon Diggs, you know, was one of the worst coverage players, but he turned the ball over. And San Francisco is a -4 turnover differential on the season. And you could say, oh, that's a little bit because of Jimmy G or whatever. But for the first half of the season, we weren't turning the ball over at all. Like on defense, we couldn't do that. And it didn't really happen until the end of the year. And so I mean, we had a lot of bend, don't break mentality.
Yes.
But you need to turn the ball over. You need to give your offensive chance to get back in it. A lot of those games that we won, the first game with the Rams, we had the Madden double up, right? 2 interceptions, multiple touchdowns, those types of things. We need to have that kind of thing. And so I think we need to get younger. Like I said, Ambry Thomas is the only corner or only defensive back under 25, and get younger in that area. The defensive line is always going to be a point of emphasis for them. The secondary just needs to not suck. And
yes, well said.
And that's it, because we were a top 10 defense with ragamuffins. Like you had Norman and Kirkpatrick, and we were a top 10 defense in the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
If you can get Ambry Thomas for a full season, Mosley, we start investing in quality backups for cheap. This team is going to be deep because the fact that we have the best defensive line coach in the NFL, and we're going to continue breeding defensive linemen out of nowhere with Arden Key, Kerry Hyder, Willis, all those guys. And you just need to invest. And investment means, for me, not 5th, 6th, 7th round picks. It means, hey, let's throw a 3rd round pick here.
Yes.
Let's throw a 4th round pick here. It doesn't need to be a 1st overall. There's very few JC Horns or Patrick Surtains that are lockdown guys. But you even saw in the Super Bowl, Jalen Ramsey is the best lockdown corner in the NFL. He got roasted for over 150 yards because, one, defensive pass interference, that the referees call that a lot more often. It's an offensive game. The NFL wants to see highlights. And so overall, you know, corners are at a disadvantage, but I think the Niners have to invest somewhere in there. And so
I totally agree.
So for me, it boils down to this. And if you listen to like the in-depth analysis on pass rush versus secondary, there's a lot of variables, right? So in pass rush, generally you rotate defensive linemen, unless they're a guy like Armstead or Bosa who are out there most of the time, if not all the time. Where in secondary, you're pretty much there. You're locked in all game, yet you're not always thrown at where the defensive linemen are engaging on every single play. So the thought process is, hey, do I invest in a guy that could affect the game on every single play? Nick Bosa has a chance to sack the quarterback on every single play, where a corner might not have the chance to make a play on a ball every single play, like on a run play or whatever. But on average, there's 5 defensive backs on the field at a time, where usually there's only 4 or 3 defensive linemen at a time. So there's a lot of different variables and how you see it. Ultimately, I just think that they've neglected secondary. I think the Niners should invest a little bit more capital and not go so heavily in defensive line. But if you wanted to be a defensive line first team, that's fine. Just invest a little bit more, just a smidge.
I'd play devil's advocate a bit there and saying that they haven't neglected it. They just haven't invested enough, right? My stance would be that they paid Jimmy Ward. They made him a well-paid free safety. They invested a 3rd rounder in Ambry Thomas. So they did something, just not enough. So I'm with you on that one. All right, I want to transition into our last topic. This is the ongoing series that we have been doing for a while. But before I do, just want to make sure to say yet again, hey, while you're watching this thing, if you enjoy the content, please consider hitting the like button, subscribing to the channel. Randon's information is down below in the description of the video. Go check it out. Give him a follow on Twitter. Subscribe to his channel as well. This is the past performance and future value segment we've been doing for the last couple of episodes. We're getting into wide receiver. just before I do, I'm going to read this comment because I think it's a nice, succinct way to put it. Ellis10, one of our sneakerheads coming in. If the Niners keep Tart and Ward and stick with the cover two high safeties, with that top-tier pass rush, they should be good to go. Ellis10, I think that's a fair statement that I don't need to say anything about because it stands on its own. Let's get into that past performance future value at wide receiver. So here are the names that we've got that we're going to be going through here, Randon. Obviously, our wide back falls into this category. Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Juwan Jennings. Those three are mostly likely to be back. And then you have Trent Sherfield, Mohamed Sanu, Travis Benjamin, and our practice squad gimme River Craycraft added in for good measure. We're going to be going through all of them. So let's start out with the wide back. What kind of a harsh grade do you have for Deebo Samuel, Randon?
Well, I don't want to short Deebo Samuel, but Craycraft's already gone, man. He's on the greener pastures. He's in Miami.
I know, he's in Miami.
So,
but he still deserves, and dude still deserves honorable mention on the program.
Yeah,
he did play for us in 2021.
We won't shortchange him. We'll come back to that, but good for him. But Deebo, A+. I just, you can't really, I think it's the best Niners wide receiver season or wide back season ever in the history of the team. I know, Jerry, people think that's blasphemy, but
that is blasphemy. I will call it out.
But the fact that he had so much impact in multiple frames of the game, he did whatever the offensive needed, all this kind of stuff. I think that, Deebo Samuel does an A+. No team could gear that up. I mean, he had inside runs, outside runs. He ran for longer runs, broke runs deep more than our running backs. The first half of the season, he was throwing the ball deep, catching the ball deep, all this kind of stuff. I just think that he was phenomenal. He revolutionized. I think he played this season like what most people thought Percy Harvin would be.
Interesting pull. I would have never made that connection, but I like it. So I say blasphemy with regard to Jerry Rice, but I will say that behind Jerry Rice, that was the greatest season by a 49er receiver. I don't object to it that much. I just, as an older head here on the program, I got to defend the greatest of all time, the unquestioned greatest of all time in Jerry Rice. I don't think Deebo's
better than Jerry Rice. I think he had a phenomenal season.
No, just talking about the season. I get it, but I still can't stand for it, Randon. I got to get my man's back. But anyway, I digress. So I agree. A+. You just can't fault him for anything. He was the heart of the team, the heart and soul of the team. He was, just an amazing physical specimen throughout the year. The abuse that he took, pretty remarkable. I have to give a tip of the cap and just let him know that I appreciate Deebo. If you're watching, if you see this, I appreciate you. I appreciate what you did this year. You deserved a Super Bowl victory, and we will get one for you sometime in the near future. Maybe Trey Lance will be the answer. I don't know, but you deserve it, Deebo. You deserve it.
So how many Brinks trucks are they backing up to his front door?
I've got Deebo. I think I'm not going over the top on how much AAV he has as far as annual average salary or value. I'm going 21 million. I think the Niners don't pay quite as much as they should. And I think it's probably because of some lingering fears around soft tissue injuries and things of that nature. So my guess is they meet somewhere in the middle of where Deebo's camp wants to be, where the Niners want to be. And I think they come together at 21 million.
Yeah, I think it's 20 to 22. I think it's backloaded. And the reason I think it's backloaded is if Ayuk has a breakout season, they're going to have to decide which one to keep. And if you have a lower salary at the trading point, you might be able to trade away Deebo, or you might be able to trade away Ayuk. So they want to keep their options open, but I think it'll be a backloaded deal at 20 to 22 million overall. But yeah, he's definitely deserved it.
Sir Juju agrees with both of us, 20 plus for sure. All right, let's move on to Brandon Ayuk, the doghouse resident who then emerged and reclaimed his spot.
Yeah, I think right now when you look at the beginning of the season, you probably would give him a D or an F for his mental attitude. I think what people have said and the vibe around him is that he came into the season and not willing to put in the work. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. I'm not in the locker room. That's the wherewithal, the doghouse, that kind of stuff. But if we go to the actual play on the field, like what he put together on tape, especially in the second half of the season, definitely give him a B plus, because the fact that he had a stretch where I think it was 6 for 70 yards over 6 games consecutively. He made a lot of plays in the back of the field. He runs a lot of routes effectively. The reception perception, which is a grade on how well they run each route. In his rookie season, he ran every single route over positive grades, except for the comeback route, which is ironically, a short route for Jimmy to hit. But I would say B plus. I think the fact that he will get more opportunities to stretch the field with Trey Lance in the future could lead to a breakout this year. We had I saw a podcast that somebody calling for over 100 catches and 1,400 yards, not yards,
Ooh.
yards. Because Trey Lance is going to throw the ball deep, and he might be that guy unless they get a burner. But I think he had a good season, and him being a first round pick, I really liked what he brought to the table, especially down the stretch.
I agree with the grade. I have him here as a B plus, and that takes into account the slow start to the season and then the resurgence that you saw. And it looks like folks in the comments are agreeing as well, with GD5 throwing out the B plus. You've got Allen throwing out the B plus. You and I are both giving him a B plus. Group think has set in at this point. It's just,
we got a lot of intelligent people in the sneakerhead clan.
Yeah. Yes. So I think that Brandon Ayuk, I had him as a sleeper in the earlier segment as far as potential breakout players, in that I have him as a potential re-emerging player, not a breakout player because he broke out in his freaking rookie year, but I see him re-emerging to that level of production. I don't think Trey Lance is going to air it out in that fashion. I think it'll be closer to like a 3,500 yard season with 500 yards rushing, somewhere around there, not a 4,000 yard season or anything. So my guess would be that Brandon Ayuk is a little closer to 1,000 yards just off the cuff in saying that. But I do think he's the most talented route runner on the team. I think he's got some amazing athletic gifts that allow him to leap defenders in a single bound. So I am excited for next year. And obviously he's still under contract, so we don't really have to worry about what the next steps are for him. Juwan Jennings is the next man up at the plate. He is, just to call out when we look at the future segment for Juwan Jennings, he is an exclusive rights free agent, which just means the Niners can basically get him back at a 1-year minimum deal. So I think we probably can both agree that the Niners are going to do that at a minimum when looking at the future segment of it. But what kind of a grade do you have for Juwan?
Yeah, I would say probably around a B for me. The reason being is that he's a number 3 receiver. And I thought a lot of people were, Kendrick Bourne, a fan favorite, the personality on the field. I think a lot of people were waiting for that step up. Sherfield was the preseason favorite. And then you had Jennings make that jump. And I think a lot of people gained respect for him in the fight, or lack thereof, when he got hit in the face, and just kind of smiled and nodded at the guy like, hey, you can't get the best of me there. And so I would say a B. I think I disagree with a lot of fans saying that we don't need wide receiver help because they love what Jennings brings to the table. I think we need to add. I think we need a different dimension, and we'll get to that at the end of this segment in the future value portion of just the wide receiver group as a whole. But for Juwan Jennings, I love the way he run blocks. Shanahan likes that. I love his attitude on the field. I love the fact that he is willing to use his body. He's a bigger receiver. And so I really think the fact that he did well enough, especially as a 7th round pick, brought value to this team. Like 5 touchdowns, I believe, is what he had. A lot of key moments and good games. And so I would give a B. What about you?
I have him as a B plus. I gave him the same grade as Brandon Ayuk, even though the production was significantly less. And to me, it's all about
is that based on expectation?
Expectations.
Okay.
You hit it right on the head, based on expectations. I didn't expect shit from Juwan Jennings, if I'm being quite honest about it. I didn't know that he would make the roster, right? When they kept around the other big-bodied wide receiver, oh God, I'm blanking on his name. The gentleman who suffered through the injuries.
Hurd?
Yes, Jalen Hurd. Thank you. Good pull. When originally thinking about the roster construction, I thought it was entirely possible that Juwan Jennings ended up on the practice squad. Lo and behold, he plays like a grown-ass man. He earned himself some snaps. He makes the contested catches, like something like 24 out of 33 of his catches were for either a first down or a touchdown, whatever that ridiculous statistic is. He also adds some value in mental attitude, in the way in which he has an enthusiasm for the game. He's very reminiscent of Kendrick Bourne, both in his ability to catch those contested balls on third down and in the end zone, and on what he brings to the huddle as far as a lighthearted mentality when the time is right, but a dog mentality when it's needed, in particular for run blocking. For me, this is an interesting one because, as we said earlier, the Niners are bringing him back. No question about it. Yeah. It could be on that 1-year deal because he is the exclusive rights free agent, but it also gives them leverage to work out a multi-year deal for him. So that's actually what I would predict for Juwan Jennings, is that they take advantage of signing him to a 2 or 3 year contract while he's still reasonably affordable, something that shows him a little bit of love for the season that he had, but locks him down for a couple of years in case he continues to take that next step next season.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they have, buyer's remorse, or bad visions about what happened with Bourne. I couldn't really think of the phrase there, but as far as Bourne had multiple seasons together with good yardage, good touchdowns, and the Patriots paid a premium for him.
Poached him.
And so maybe the Niners hey, well, let's get a 2 or 3 year deal on this guy. He's not going to cost that much because he's only had 1 year production, where Bourne had multiple years. Right. And maybe we can get him for 2 or 3 mil per year over 2 years, and not have that kind of consistent, free agent status among the wide receiver group.
Agreed. All right, let's move on to Mohamed Sanu, who was, injured for a fair portion of the season, but had some production, was the fourth most productive wide receiver on the team, although that's not saying much. 15 catches, 177 yards. What grade are you giving to Mohamed Sanu, and do you envision him back with the team as far as the future look?
D- for me. I mean, he was brought in to be the number 3 guy. Never really came to be that. His production, as far as the amount of snaps that he played versus the production on the field, was way less for the production. And he's getting older, and I think this can stem also to Travis Benjamin and other receivers of that ilk, is that they need to get younger in that position, and they need a guy that can stretch the field. And maybe I'm going to switch this type of topic here, and I'm going to ask you this, because I think the rest of the receivers in this group are kind of in the same ilk. Whether I don't think that any of them will be back. What kind of receiver do you think the Niners need, and where is that? Is there a free agent maybe you can think of on the top of your head, or is that going to be in the draft?
The Niners need bodies at wide receiver. There's no question about it. They have Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk under contract, and they're most likely bringing back Juwan Jennings. I'd say 99.9% sure he's going to be back for next season, but that leaves just 3 bodies in that wide receiver room. I do think there's a chance that they bring back Trent Sherfield, and we'll get into his grade in just a moment. But I do want to answer this question first. Before I do, I think that it would be because of attitude. It would be because he is the lunch pail guy that brings his lunch pail to work. He's a grinder. He does everything right. And so when you're looking at those final 3 spots, you've got to think, what do those individuals bring to the table? Trent Sherfield is an acceptable gunner on the punt return team, and I think brings the right mentality to it.
I agree with you. I think they'll bring him back too.
Yeah, but Mohamed Sanu, I think he's done. I've got him at a D+, a little bit higher than you did. But if I'm honest, I could have brought it down a little bit. I could be in that solid D- range. He had a rough season. I think that the injuries certainly hurt. The emergence of Juwan Jennings certainly hurt. But from what I heard around the locker room, people appreciated his presence there. So I did give him a little bit of nod. I'll lead that directly into Trent Sherfield before kicking it back to you. And I had him at a C, even though his production was less than Mohamed Sanu, because he just had the 9 catches, 87 yards. He did have a touchdown, which Mohamed Sanu did not. But it was because of what he brought on special teams and because of that attitude. And I do think it's because of those 2 factors that I could see him back on a 1-year deal yet again. Something, pretty team friendly at that point.
Yeah, you're 100% correct. And I really, forgive me, Sherfield. I forgot about you. I was lumping in Sanu and Benjamin in the same milk. But, he was, for me, I made a statement earlier in the year or in preseason. I thought by the end of the season, Sherfield will be the clear number 1 or number 3 based on Trey Lance being the guy, because Sherfield has more, has that straight line speed. He's a bigger wide receiver that we don't have. So I thought that he would clearly carve out that role. It didn't really happen. But he made the most out of his situation and being a gunner, being on special teams. I think that Sherfield is intelligent enough to come in and play wide receiver based if there's an injury. He definitely got into a little bit of a doghouse kind of thing because he missed some key blocks in the run game, which Cal does not like. But I do think that Sherfield will be back. That's a very good observation by you, Rob.
And then lastly, we'll talk about these two. I'll hit them both, and then you can give your opinion and a nod to River Craycraft as the honorable mention practice squad candidate who is already gone. So Travis Benjamin, to me, he's by far the worst grade for me. I am hesitant to give out any Fs, but this is the one that I debated it. I have it as a solid D-, maybe an F. A goose egg as a receiver, did not have a catch on the season. 2 kick returns for 24 yards. But, oh, wait, on one of those, there was the critical fumble in Seattle as he was trying to make something happen. So just 2 kick returns. He fumbled half the time. I'm sorry. I'm not taking shots at you, Travis. I don't mean that. He was a little more effective as a punt returner, but it's a small sample size. 3 punts for 47 yards. A little bit of redemption there. Maybe that's the reason I don't give him the F, is because he did average over 15 yards per return in returning punts. I just don't see a spot for Travis Benjamin on this team. To me, I think the Niners move on, but they will have to replace him. The Niners will need a speed guy. To me, in looking forward at the future, with regard to the wide receiver room, one of these 3 bodies that needs to be refilled so we get back up to 6 receivers on the starting roster, I think has to be a speed guy and a return man. And to me, you use 1 or 2 of those 7th round compensatory picks that you have in the draft, and you've got to take a couple of swings at the bat. You've got to invest in special teams is what I'm saying. I'm just so frustrated by this particular regime and their seeming refusal to spend any considerable assets on special teams. It is the 3rd phase of the game. I'm with Harbaugh that you only need to win 2 out of the 3 phases. And if special teams can be one of those, the Niners have an elite defense. They have an up-and-coming star at quarterback. To me, it's just like this is the magic sauce that the Niners need to uncover, investing in special teams.
100% agree. Benjamin, it's an F for me. I mean, he didn't do anything. It is what it is. He made some catches in the playoffs, which surprised me that he was even on the field. But we talked about investing in special teams and a receiver. And I think there's a hybrid player that I really like in the draft that a lot of other people have been talking about. And his name is Calvin Austin III. So there's been a lot of people that have been to the Senior Bowl that really touted him. So this website right here, NFLDraftBuzz.com, has him ranked as the 9th best receiver in the draft. And you're like, oh, well, he won't be there for the Niners, or we shouldn't spend that. But he's predicted to be around the 100 range because he's short, 5'9", 173 soaking wet, but he runs a 4.2, like Olympic type speed.
Whoa.
And so he could be a super type player that could take the top off the field. He's had a little bit of experience in the return game, but all it needs to break 1 or 2. And so what I would do, if I were me, I would draft Calvin Austin III, and then I would sign Jakeem Grant out of Miami to a 1-year deal. Jakeem Grant. He's had a touchdown in either the return game or punt returns or kick returns every single year that he's been a pro, besides 1. So, he's got 4 punt returns for touchdowns and 2 kick returns for a touchdown. So if you can get Grant to be the lead special teams guy this year and train Austin in that realm, and then you have the deep threat of Austin as far as either the 3rd or 4th best receiver, and Austin's predicted anywhere between 80 to 120 between multiple drafts, which means we don't need to trade up. The pick is there. I think you double team that, or you go back to back and deal with that need. and we have plenty of good returners. We have a deep threat in Austin, that 4-2 speed that can just take the top off the field. I think that's the recipe that you need for Trey Lance.
I would be just fine with that. By the way, I just want, for clarity's sake, I do want to bring this in there. Bay Area Baller, one of our sneakerheads on the channel, pointing out, asking, wow, Benjamin never caught a ball, right? That's regular season. I didn't say regular season, and I should have, because Hugh Tao is correct about this one. Benjamin did have a clutch catch against the Cowboys in the playoffs. I do need to give him his due there. Good pull right there. I knew that in the top of my head, and I should have said as much, because that's a more accurate way of phrasing it, that it was regular season. He had 0 receptions. Well, we have to give the honorable mention, the incomplete grade, to River Craycraft. I can't give him a grade, but what I want to call out here is, yes, he's already on to Miami, so we don't have to cover the future segment with regard to River himself, but he is what the Niners need to bring back in at the tail end of the roster. River Craycraft and players like him that are effort guys, that are practice squad guys, that are locker room guys. You need to have that at the tail end of a good roster. You need guys who come in and scrap and claw and kick and bite for every freaking inch. And you saw that with River Craycraft. I think he had that forced fumble late in the season where he made a difference coming in. And to me, again, it's the Niners recognizing that they need to invest a little bit at that position. And whether it's bringing back Sherfield and drafting some of these guys, they just need to spend some assets on that area of the roster, in my book.
Yeah, I think, and Craycraft had some moments in preseason and this kind of stuff to where maybe he was too down the depth chart, right? When you're undrafted or a late draft, but you have to earn.
Yes, you do.
Jennings had the opportunity this year and he earned it, right? And so now with Miami, I mean, I know their wide receiver room is kind of deep. I mean, Will Fuller will be gone because he was on a 1-year deal and all that kind of stuff like that. But he might have an opportunity to be a 3rd or 4th guy there and carve his way out. And like, there's been plenty of guys in the NFL that are late bloomers, right? The biggest one that I can think of is Wes Welker, right? So you have, he played for Miami and San Diego and no receptions his first year, and only 1 touchdown the 2 following years. And then he went his first year in New England, 112 for 1175 and a lot of touchdowns. And so sometimes you're a late bloomer and all you need is an opportunity. And I'm not calling River Craycraft a Wes Welker type or anything like that, but I think sometimes you need opportunity. Sometimes you need to change the scenery, and he might have that with Miami, to where he could be a 3 or 4 guy special teamer and actually get some time on the field other than just being on the practice squad.
Amen to that. And I would be all for it. I love it when guys earn that. All right. This has been a fantastic show. As always, I got to say before we go, the same thing that I say every time. We appreciate all of you being here. We appreciate the dialogue that goes on in that freaking chat right over there. It's fantastic.
You guys
I absolutely love going back and forth with all of you. So if you enjoy it as well, please consider hitting the like button on this video. It's just a little quick click, a little quick click.
Tap, taparoo.
Little taparoo. And then subscribe, and then hit the notification bell, and then turn on your YouTube notifications, because weirdly, you have to do both. And then go over into the description. Go find Randon on Twitter and subscribe to his YouTube channel as well. It has been a great show. Before we go, I just want to call out Brandon Katz coming in. He's very irritated. You guys don't talk about Shanahan's coaching in big games. He blows leads in every big game by making bad decisions. The Super Bowl against KC, the Patriots, Atlanta Super Bowl, Rams 49er game. Brandon, I just wanted to bring that up because I don't want to feel like we're ducking it. We're not. We actually talk about that quite a bit. It just didn't fit into our topic list tonight. But the next time we are on early in the segment, hit us up with an @RobSchuh question, and we will try to work it in, because I do criticize Shanahan for that. Randon and I have spent several sessions talking about Coach Shanahan and his propensity to get tight in those key moments. So it's not something that we shy away from. I don't think there are any topics that we shy away from here on Between Two Beards, because that's how we roll, right, Randon?
You can't say it any better than that, my friend.
Nice. It's always a pleasure having you here, my friend. We will be back next. Well, that's maybe not true. I will be at the combine. So you got to follow me at the Left Shoe on Twitter to find out what my schedule is going to be like. I will post it on my YouTube page. I will post it on Twitter. Randon and I will do a show. Timing wise, it may be a little different next week because I will be in Indianapolis. And so we will have to work around that fact. But this was a fantastic show. Always a pleasure to be on here. You know the deal. Until next time, when I'm on tomorrow with the Sneakerhead Call-In Show at 5 p.m., cheers, Niner faithful.
Thank you so